You're not going to want to miss this episode of the AI Show where we revisit Azure AI Content Understanding, a build follow-up my friend Vinod. Make sure you tune in. Hello and welcome to this episode of the AI Show where we're talking all about Azure AI Content Understanding, a build follow-up my friend Vinod. Vinod, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great, Seth. Thank you for having me on the show again.
Fantastic. For those who don't know you, you're quite a regular now. Tell us who you are and what you do.
Yeah, so I am responsible across the Azure AI portfolio services. We have a few different services that we work on. Content understanding is one. Most of our customers know us for document intelligence or OCR, as well as vision services. So we have a portfolio of services that our team works on.
So let's talk about content understanding. We have another video that we've done. We did a couple of weeks ago. I don't know if it was a month or two ago. For those that don't know what it is, can you give us a refresher on what problems it's solving?
Yeah, if you think about content understanding, we're solving two core problems for customers, right? First is how do you get your data into a usable format? And that is all of the unstructured data that you're working with across the enterprise. You know, video, audio, video is tending to be a hugely accelerated sort of format of data that most enterprises deal with. And making that content usable in scenarios that they need, that's one of the core value props for content understanding. But more importantly, as we've been looking at like how customers are using sort of these tools in the process of generating insights, one of the things we realize is it's not simply a process of extracting information from content. It's a combination of things that they're trying to do. It's a combination of validating that information when it's extracted, ensuring that they can link that information together, generating a representation of the schema that is an aggregation across data sets or across documents or audio and video, and then finally producing sort of an output that a human can validate, look at, and ensure that it's actually usable. So a lot of these things have typically been handled as sort of a post-processing or sort of a multiple steps in a process. And with content understanding, we're trying to bring all this together into one easy-to-use step for most customers.
Yeah, and I love the idea because I remember it's all coming back to me now. But I remember specifically thinking, wow, so basically any kind of fuzzy asset like a PDF or a Word doc or a video or even an image of a form, I can use to unfuzzy it in a fuzzy way. Like, because I remember looking at this and you're like, yeah, just tell it the fields you want and it'll pull it out. I'm like, well, is there more? No, it isn't. And so I love the way of looking at content understanding as a way of going from human made things like docs and going into structured things that then you can use and automate in a workflow. Did I get that right? Because that's what I'm recollecting.
That's exactly it, right. And that workflow could be an agent. So content understanding could be a tool that every agent can use, or it could just be a simple workflow, right? Like depending on what the need is. But most importantly, it's about bringing those two components together, which is essentially generating the structured output, but then reasoning over it to produce the actual output that you need as part of the downstream process, right? And I think we'll talk a little bit more as we go through it today.
I love it. So that was that little sort of like a recap of the last episode. But we've since had Microsoft Build, which is one of Microsoft's big flagship conferences, and you announced some things. What are some of the new problems that you're solving with people can solve with content understanding?
Yeah, so at Build, we announced a new capability within content understanding that's being released as Pro Mode, right? If you think about a typical task, right, Seth, I ask you to say, Seth, can you work on this problem for me and say, like, can you extract all this information from these documents for me? Let's just take taxes as a simple example, okay? I give you a shoebox full of documents and I say, Seth, can you extract all this information from me, from these taxes, right? And now the problem becomes, not only do I have to go extract all the different fields that I need from each of these individual documents, but I have to now create in the US, it's a 1040, and in different parts of the world, it's a different type of document, right? So you have to create a schema that is representative of your tax problem. So that's essentially one of the things that we're building into content understanding with Pro Mode is it adds two specific capabilities. First is the ability for you to bring in multiple input files into a single request or a single process. And then the second is it allows you to bring in reference data, which is your organizational knowledge, your organizational processes, your standard operating procedures, to now combine those two things and produce the output that you want. So this requires a lot of reasoning. That is another new capability that's being added into content understanding. And so Pro Mode is essentially a combination of all of these things. Think of it as a fast lane and a slow lane. Like you can give us a document and say, just extract these things for me. That's standard mode. We just go as fast as we can, extract the things that you need, and you're off and running. But with pro mode, think of it as a little bit more of a, okay, I'm giving you a job. I want you to take some time, think about this problem, and produce the right output that I need. And that's where pro mode excels at, is really taking all these different components of the input and then producing the output that you need.
Holy cow! So let me see if I understand this right, because you laid down some knowledge. I didn't know if I got. So essentially, not the old way, but the fast way is you give it a document, it extracts stuff. Now in pro mode, you give it a document or something or collection of things, it extracts stuff, but then you want it to do some task with that information, like an agentic task or even just a reasoning model to be like, okay, now from this information, look at this doc on what you're supposed to do and execute on that. Is that right? Because I feel like I fuzzily get it.
Yes, exactly right. Like look. Let's take a simple example that is not taxes, right? So I've got a demo that I can show you with contracts, for example, right?
Right.
Where there's two contracts. You get a red line version of a contract. You're trying to just identify what are the two differences between these two contracts, so I can know like what I need to focus on as an individual, right? But then there's also things that you might want to understand about, like, hey, how does this contract differ from any of the standard terms that I have within my organization, right? And now it makes it more meaningful, because now you can say like, okay, not only are these two terms, did the terms on these contracts change, but now I can also say, oh, this is actually a non-standard term for me. So now I need to go back to my lawyers and work with them on making sure that this actually is something that we can sign.
I think I get it now. So it's more of like extracting things, but then also reasoning over the extracted things based on other reference, pieces of content.
Exactly, right. So it's you, if you think about that workflow, right? So most customers will build today is they extract this information, then they go through this process of validating all this information, then they go through this process of like defining the right structure that they need from this particular document, image, audio, or video. And eventually then it gets to a human, where the human looks at it and says like, okay, this kind of makes sense to me, or this might not make sense to me, and they sort of perform those actions, right? And so what we're trying to do is maximize the amount of things that we can do within content understanding to minimize the human sort of action or activity that humans need to perform.
So I'm just spitballing here, Vinod, because I just had a spark of an idea. I could effectively, if I want, as part of the AI show workflow process,
Yeah.
take this video,
Yeah.
put it into content understanding, give it a document that says, these are the ways we like to do our show summaries for AI show.
Yeah.
Make a summary for me on this video, and it will just do it.
Technically, yes, but right now, not quite there yet.
Okay.
The reason being, Content Understanding Pro mode currently only supports documents as the input. Working on extending that.
But I could actually output content understanding. I could make a document of the show transcript and then pass it in again.
Absolutely.
See,
yes.
we made it work in my head, and I love that idea, because this makes it real for me. I love the legal one as well, but being able to go from video to text, because I also probably want the transcript too, if I'm being honest, and convert it into like VTT files, like which are like for transcripts, and then I could use that transcript to generate a summary according to a reasoning thing. I feel like I want to see this. You got something to show us?
Yeah, let me actually show you a couple of things, right? So you talked a little bit about the video scenario, but before we do that, let's go take a look at like how you might use content understanding with documents to start with, right?
Let's do it.
So let me do this. Let me share my screen. Let me know when you can see this. So what you see here is a couple of different input files that I have. You'll see that I have two different versions of the exact same contract. So it's the same contract, just two different versions. Think of it as like you created a version, I updated it with a slightly different set of terms that I wanted based on what my sort of red line version is. But I also have additional files that I'm bringing in as reference data, right? And when you think about reference data, this could be your organizational knowledge. In this case, it is the standard terms for the particular organization that's dealing with this particular contract. So the task that we're setting up here is to say, let's go extract some information from these documents. Each of these things are like typical things that you would expect from a contract, like the different parties involved, start dates and end dates and things like that, right? But I'm also doing something a little bit more complicated, which is extracting a list of all the clauses that are contained within this contract. And now we go even further and we say, let's go identify each of the deviations from the standard terms, right? So I'm just giving it a simple description in the description field, which by the way is super powerful. Like you can just define what you want
Yeah.
as plain English in the description. And it's now going to look at each of the clauses in the contract, identify which of these is the terms in the standard terms, and then go identify if there's any specific differences. So that's essentially what we're trying to do with these two fields that we've defined, right? Now, this particular process takes a little bit of time to run. I
Hold
just
on,
ran it.
before we go there, because
Yeah.
I want to make sure before we go to another tab. So here's the question I have, and this here, let me put our faces up so people can see us. So the question I have is, these fields, like you just add it and tell it, like, give me a field like this.
Yes. That's
So
it.
the clauses make sense to me.
Yeah.
How do let me move our faces because it might be in the way. How does it know when it talks about deviations from standard term? How does it know to look at other documents to know what the deviations are?
So that's essentially all we're doing with this little description field, right? So we're telling it, like, review each of the clauses, compare it to the corresponding clauses in the standard terms in its entirety, and if there's any differences, describe the specific deviations. So that's all you're trying to that's
That's all you
all you
do.
need to do to tell it that, hey, I'm going to expect that there's going to be some standard terms you can find. Go find those. And when you find those, compare the terms in this contract or the clauses in this contract to those standard terms and tell me if there's any deviations.
So you don't even have to, like, that's all you have to do.
That's all you have to do.
Okay. All right. So
Right?
I need to see this sorcery here. And what is, how do you actually execute this and then make it do its thing?
Yeah. So all I do is, in this case, I gave it two separate documents to compare, as well as I showed you the reference data that we added in.
Right.
I'm going to hit run analysis here. This run analysis is basically going to analyze these two inputs against that reference data that we provided. And now I can go try this out, right? But it typically takes a couple of minutes for this to run because, again, this reasoning model takes a little bit of time to go through all these documents and try to figure this out. So I've
When we say
already
a couple
run
of minutes,
this.
are we talking like 15 minutes or what?
Oh, no, it's about 2 to 3 minutes in this.
Okay. So
It
I know,
depends.
like, let's put our face up. I
Yeah.
know that this happens a lot. Everyone's like, I just got to apologize here. This model is going to take about, 120 seconds to read two legal documents, compare them against each other, and then compare them against a reference document. But sorry, it's going to take 120 seconds. We always apologize. I think this is awesome that it's actually doing that, to be honest.
It is pretty incredible the amount of work that's being done, right? And it's also, if you think about the problem, it's more than just simply that. It's also that reference data that you saw was a single document. You could give us a list of documents, and then now it has to do an additional search, try to find the
Wow.
one that actually matters, and then bring that into the process. So it's actually doing a ton of work on your behalf behind the
All right,
scenes.
let's see the output.
Yeah. So if you look at the output, you'll see that I'm obviously extracting all the typical fields that you'd expect to find in these contracts. But when you look at the clauses, again, you'll see that it's got about 22 clauses that it's extracting. It's just extracting the title of the clause. That's all I care about for right now. But when you start looking at the more complex fields that require to understand what's happening here, you'll see that there's a few different examples here that it's identifying some issues with, right? So, for example, it's saying that there's a deviation between the contract version that says the cure period of 60 days versus the standard term says only 30 days, right? So this particular vendor is trying to ask for additional time for this default remediation process. Now, as a human, I can then determine if, like, hey, is this okay? Am I okay with this, or do I want to go back to the customer or the contract and say, no, we want to stick to our standard terms of 30 days, right? Similarly, you'll see that there's also the same sort of issues happening with cancellation notice. And finally, as you look at sort of the differences, you'll also notice that there's some additional differences that it's calling out, which is there's differences between the two contracts themselves, right? So if you look at this particular contract, it says July 30th versus this particular contract, it says July 8th, right? So there's differences between the contracts that it's able to identify. There's differences between the contract terms and the standard terms that it's able to identify, and it's able to put this together in a consumable format that you defined as the schema that you want to extract from this.
That's really cool. And this is now available as of build, which was in May.
This is available in preview as a build, right? So now we're on our path to GA. So we're looking to GA later this year, and as we go through that process, this is also going to be a capability that customers can start using right now in content understanding.
Fantastic.
Yeah, there's actually one more thing that I wanted to call out, right? As you think about how you use that description field, that description field is super powerful, right? So in this example, I gave it a video as an input, and I said, oh, as an output, I also want just the Spanish translation of the description, right? Don't just give me the description of the video, also give me the Spanish translation of the description, right? And you can see here, Seth, you speak Spanish.
Yes.
I don't. So um, this is a video that describes how to use a ladder or a lift and change a light bulb, I think is what it's trying to describe here. So I'm
That's
assuming
cool.
that's pretty consistent to
And so
what you're.
is this a new feature for video as of build, or what is this? What's the new bits of this stuff?
There's really no new bits. What I wanted to call out is like for example, if you look at this actual schema that was defined, I'm just giving it like a field name that's saying Spanish description, and I'm just giving it a description that says generate the Spanish language translation of the description that you're generating for this particular field, right? So it's what I'm just trying to call out is the versatility of the product, and it can just do what you want it to do without you having to do a lot of work and calling a bunch of APIs and trying to figure this out for yourself.
So it turns out we can take this very video, put it into content understanding, and have it generate a description for me.
Exactly.
See, and in multiple languages if we want to as well.
Exactly. So you could do translations of each of the different speakers into different languages, as many as you needed.
Well, this is awesome. Where can people go to find out more?
So we have some links. Obviously, like I'd like to share the blog announcement of like what we launched at Build, because that probably gives a lot more context around not just Pro Mode, but a ton of other newer features that were released as part of the payload. But we also have the What's New page on Content Understanding that you can go look at, as well as the Pro Mode page on Content Understanding to learn more.
Awesome. We have a quick start as well. Well, this has been awesome. Vinod, it's always a pleasure to have you on, my friend.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you so much, Seth.
Yeah, and thank you so much for watching. We're learning all about Azure AI Content Understanding, a build follow-up with my friend Vinod Kripalu. You might see us using this tech for the AI show here shortly. So thank you so much for watching, and hopefully we'll see you next time. Take care.